North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. How are you? What is this, Wednesday? Hump day. Yeah, it's Wednesday. And that means we're halfway through the work week. Sort of. I hope you're having a good work week. We have a lot. Well, it's been an amazing work week for me. I'm just saying. Man, oh man. So many things going on. So many shocking things going on with our United States government. And I'm just kind of wondering where that's going to stop. So Margaret Jones announces that Nevada is here. Nevada, so good to see you. Thanks for joining us, Margaret. That's very nice. So happy to wake up in a country that swats former presidents as a means to prevent them from running again. That's Jeff. What are your comments? That's one of the things that we court around here. This radio broadcast, in case you don't know, is about the news, analysis. We analyze for fact and bias, and we point out each. And then I make commentary. That's not news. That's just my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And then the debate part is just what people have been doing already, which is to show up and tell me what you think. You can do it two ways. You can do it on the chat, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. And you can also call me on the telephone at 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. So here's what's going on. The latest stuff of what's going on with that FBI raid against Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. This comes to us from Fox News. FBI agents scoured Melania Trump's wardrobe. Ugh. That really hit me for some reason. It was like, really? But I suppose that's what they have to do. They spent several hours combing through Donald Trump's private office, breaking open his safe, rifling through drawers when they raided the former First Lady's Mar-a-Lago home. In Florida on Monday morning, the Post has learned, the Washington Post, that's not the Washington Post, that's the New York Post, by the way, in case you're wondering. The Post has learned that the search warrant used by the FBI to enter the palatial Palm Beach property focused solely on presidential records and evidence of classified information being stored there. A source close to the former president expressed concern that FBI agents or DOJ lawyers conducting the search could have planted stuff because they would not allow Trump's attorneys inside the 128-room building to observe the operation, which lasted more than 9 hours, which begs this question. I have to know this from you if you do not mind. Do you think the FBI would plant or manufacture evidence against Donald Trump? Yes or no, and why? Do you believe that the FBI and the DOJ, do you believe that they would plant or manufacture evidence against Donald Trump? Yes or no, and why? Okay, that's just a question I'm asking. I just want to know. I want to know what you think. Telephone number 817-379-2172. The raid was conducted with 30 plainclothes agents from the Southern District of Florida, not exactly plainclothes agents. In fact, some of them were wearing tactical gear. And by the way, I thought the touch by the Coast Guard, having an armed Coast Guard Zodiac boat out there with an M240 Bravo mounted to it. I thought that was a nice touch, just in case anybody wanted to swim across the water to get away from the search. I found that absolutely ridiculous. And, I was always wondering how come we don't have boats like that on the Rio Grande, the southern border of the United States. I'd really kind of like to know about that too. How interesting. Anyway, just saying. By the way, they have been talking with the president for months. They had a comment. They had a conversation in June. We're going to be talking about that coming up a little bit later on. The raid was through the entire 3,000 square foot private quarters, as well as separate offices and safes, a locked basement storage room, 15 cardboard boxes of material were stored there. That it was kind of interesting. It came up today that in June, they said, or at some meeting, they said, "Gosh, you know what? We need these locked up." And so what they ended up doing was installing a padlock on the door of the basement where they're in the room to the room where all these boxes were stored. Well, they broke the lock off the door during this raid. You know, if you asked for the key, we'd be more than happy to. The feds arrived at 9 a.m. They left at 6:30 p.m. On eyewitness to the raid said that all the boxes were confiscated by federal agents on Monday. Now, I don't know what boxes they're talking about. The 15 boxes that were referred to had been returned in January. Now, what I've heard is that there were 10 boxes of stuff that were taken. What they were, don't know. More about that coming up in just a couple of moments. The boxes, by the way, contain documents and mementos from the Trump presidency, reportedly including letters from Barack Obama and Kim Jong-un, other correspondence with world leaders. A legal source said the boxes had been packed by the General Service Administration and shipped to Mar-a-Lago when Trump left the office in January of 2020. And they were returned in January of 2022. Trump's attorneys, led by Evan Corcoran, have been fully cooperating with federal authorities on the return of documents to the National Archives. In May, Corcoran granted access to Mar-a-Lago's windowless storage room to FBI agents who spent several hours searching through the boxes. Trump stopped by the basement to say hello at some point, says someone who was there. Yeah, this is one of those heavy-handed weird things that we haven't figured out yet. And I'm very interested in the fact that we have heard nothing from Attorney General Merrick Garland, anybody from the DOJ, anybody from the FBI, anybody from the White House. Nobody has said a word. Access to the 20-acre private country club is believed to have been granted by heavily armed U.S. Secret Service agents stationed at the front gates, toting M4 carbines. Lawyers of the former president, who were caught off guard by the raid, arrived an hour later. The FBI would have not executed a search warrant without notifying the Secret Service first, according to a retired high-ranking United States Secret Service agent. USS legal counsel probably would have directed them to see a copy of the warrant and then step back. Once inside the air-conditioned, white marble-clad private quarters, agents fanned out to search every room. Shocked staff were instructed by Trump lawyers to unlock doors and provide the FBI access to every room, including the sumptuous Versailles master bedroom, renovated by Melania 2 years ago. Another group of agents, including a professional safe cracker, moved to a separate part of the enormous 1924 Spanish stucco building to search Trump's office and safe. The demeanor of the 3 DOJ lawyers who accompanied the FBI was described by one eyewitness as arrogant, and they reportedly told Trump representatives, "We have full access to everything. We can go everywhere." Despite the sweltering 91-degree temperature on Monday, Trump's lawyers were forbidden by the feds to shelter inside the cool lobby or to observe the search in any way, but were left outside in the sun near a parking lot. Now, once again, that leads me back to the question that I just asked you a moment ago. Do you believe the FBI or the DOJ would manufacture evidence against Donald Trump? Would they plant evidence against Donald Trump? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. There are a lot of things that are really amazing about this. We're going to get to all of it here coming up in just a little bit. But there are things that are very, very concerning to me, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. From USA Today, there were some circumstances that talked a little bit about. Hang on just a second here. There we go. 2 days after the FBI searched the Florida estate of former President Donald Trump, the unprecedented action still reverberates across Washington. Republicans are chastising the Justice Department, others bracing for what it means in ongoing criminal investigations involving President Trump, his allies, and his family business. There are some interesting pieces of information. Former President Donald Trump knows what the FBI agents took from his private club in Palm Beach and knows why they took it. This, according to former federal prosecutors. Before leaving Mar-a-Lago and executing the search, FBI agents were legally required to leave behind the search warrant and an inventory listing what items were taken, according to Fort Lauderdale defense attorney Richard Serafini. Now, we've heard from Trump personnel that they did not leave a copy of the search warrant. I would assume that they had to leave a copy of the inventory. But once again, we have not heard anything from anybody about this, including, by the way, the Trump camp. We haven't heard anybody from Trump talking about that. If they had a copy of the search warrant, you would think that they would release it. So we don't know. Plus, the search warrant would have listed what crimes agents believe may have been committed that prompted their unprecedented request to search the home of a past president, according to former federal prosecutor David Weinstein. If the documents left behind indicate they found little of importance, Trump could release them to the public. The silence from Trump and his attorneys could mean agents alerted them that the former president is suspected of more serious crimes than simply not turning over presidential records to the National Archives. Well, once again, that would be in the search warrant. So why don't we have any of that? Now, what does this mean? Well, it means one of two things. Either it was a fishing expedition and there were no fish in the pond, or there's something else going on that we don't know anything about. As far as these federal prosecutors, these former federal prosecutors saying, well, Trump knows what they were looking for and what they took. Yeah, that's a supposition that has absolutely no basis in fact. What I do find interesting is the Trump people, the Trump family, haven't released any of these papers either. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm interested in. Now, there is something else that I find incredibly interesting. And it is interesting, so interesting that the New Yorker magazine has written an op-ed about it. It's a daily comment by David Rohde. In his time as a federal prosecutor, Merrick Garland tried dozens of cases from street crimes to the Oklahoma City bombing. During more than 20 years on the bench as a federal judge, he issued hundreds of rulings on issues ranging from national security to tax law. As Attorney General, he oversees the work of 116,000 Justice Department staffers, including employees of the FBI and several other federal law enforcement agencies. But it is Garland's decision regarding the conduct of Donald Trump, in particular decisions related to an FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago Monday morning, that will define his legacy and either strengthen or erode public trust in the institutions he's trying to revive, both the FBI and the Justice Department. There's more about this coming up in just a couple of moments. The New Yorker, a very interesting piece here. You should learn a little bit more about it. If you want to know, go to the New Yorker website. It's newyorker.com. And then you can race me to the end of the article. You are watching the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being here today. It's awfully good. Once again, we do have a whole bunch of people in the chat room. We do. Can't imagine what a mess they must have left. What is this with 15 boxes? If he had taken that many, it would have been said before this. The 15 boxes... See, that's something else. That's 15 boxes he brought from the GSA, packed them up, sent them to Mar-a-Lago. And he returned all those in January. I heard that there were 10 boxes taken by FBI agents after the search. So there are a lot of weeds that we have to pick, and we'll get to those coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining me again today. It's important that you're here because we discuss the real news here. We analyze it for fact and bias. We make comments on all the things that we have talked about above, and then we debate with you about what all that means. That's the Wells Report. So we're spending a little bit of time with a New Yorker magazine op-ed piece that we're going to continue with here in just a couple of seconds. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get to a couple of things here from the chat room. You can chat with us, and it's perfectly welcome. Go to YouTube or Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and join us. So Jeff Emerson says, fact and bias, former Epstein lawyer signed the warrant for the Mar-a-Lago raid. Yes. This guy left a U.S. attorney's office in Florida and became a lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein. And all I can say on this particular circumstance is, remember those guys, those QAnon guys that talked about a pedophilia ring and so on and so forth surrounded Jeffrey Epstein and a lot of highly placed government officials? I find it very, very interesting that he would be the guy that would sign that search warrant. And he's not a federal judge. He's not a federal judge. He's a federal magistrate. I find that very, very interesting. Not that I believe the QAnon jazz and so on, but but there were an awful lot of people that looked at that and said, "Oh, really?" And I'm one of them. Oh, really? Interesting. Let's see. I've been asking whether or not you believe the DOJ or the FBI would plant evidence against Donald Trump or manufacture evidence against Donald Trump. I also want to know whether you think they'd leave listening devices in the office and in the entire area. I mean, if you were Donald Trump, would you have the entire area swept for listening devices? I sure would. Especially the idea that the lawyers could not be in the rooms with them as they went from room to room to room. Especially when you consider the background of the FBI, up to and including having somebody wearing a wire into the Oval Office. These questions have to be asked. It's not a conspiracy theory to ask them. And the reason it's not a conspiracy theory to ask them is because they've done all this stuff. They have manufactured evidence. They have altered evidence. They have perjured themselves before the FISA court. They have done all manner of things. They've attempted to insert a wire into the Oval Office. Do you think it's out of the question that the FBI wouldn't plant a whole bunch of bugs in there? After all, they'd been there for 8 hours with no supervision of any kind. Now, from what I do understand, the security cameras were left on. I don't know what the story is with that. So I asked whether or not you believe that they would manufacture evidence or plant evidence or alter evidence or any number of other things. One of the people in the chat room said, yes, I believe they can and would if the price was right. Another said, yes, they can make incriminating evidence appear and disappear on a whim. Let's see what else. Somebody else says, I think President Trump is 5 miles ahead of them. They might be there in the basement. Would you ken that there's a copy of every one of them somewhere? Okay. Let's see. My comments weren't coming through from Facebook, so I switched to YouTube, said Jesse. How can they do this, JD? Well, that remains to be seen. There are an awful lot of people trying to figure out just exactly what the hell they're talking about and why they did what they did. Good afternoon, JD and friends. Yes, they need to sanitize, disinfect the entire property, too. They should have never done that to Trump. Get ready, people. They did it to him. They'll do it to us. Yeah. And that's what I want to know. Do you believe the FBI would manufacture evidence against Donald Trump? Do you believe the DOJ would do that? Do you believe they'd plant evidence? Give us a call, 817-379-2172. This is The Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. We're talking a little bit more about the raid at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private residence in Florida. The New Yorker has come up with a very interesting op-ed piece. We're sharing that with you. The headlines are rife across the United States. Merrick Garland was certainly the guy who signed off on this, what looks like an ill-advised raid to begin with. And then it went down to a federal magistrate, a guy who used to be a Jeffrey Epstein lawyer. Now, I'm not making any kind of connection, okay, between Jeffrey Epstein and this guy. I'll let you do that if you think there's one there, but I do find it somewhat interesting, just for the sake of it. Because if indeed he had something, if this magistrate had some problems as a Epstein lawyer, then they wouldn't have any problem putting any leverage on him necessary to get him to sign the search warrant, would they? Do you think they'd play hardball at that level? Do you believe that the FBI would put listening devices into Donald Trump's personal residence? Do you believe that they'd manufacture evidence? Do you believe that they'd plant evidence? Yes or no, and why? No's an okay answer. I just want to know why you believe that. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Or you can join us in the chat. So the New Yorker, Garland is in a very interesting situation. After definitely approving this particular raid, he's got a problem. If he does not indict Trump, says the New Yorker, and reveal there's clear evidence he committed a potential crime, he risks emboldening lawlessness of the former president and his allies on the right. That's how you know it's New Yorker magazine. I doubt very sincerely that anything like that would happen. The raid may prove to have simply been an effort to recover classified documents that belong in secure government facilities. But Trump and his allies immediately cast the former president as the victim of a deep state plot. Do you think that's what this is? Is this chapter 2 of the deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump? Yes or no, and why? 817-379-2172. House Republicans quickly rallied around Trump in a blunt threat. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy castigated Garland, signaling the Republicans will investigate his conduct if they win control of the chamber. He accused the Attorney General, the country's chief law enforcement officer, of a weaponization of the Justice Department, telling him, quote, preserve your documents and clear your calendar. Ari Fleischer, George W. Bush's former press secretary, attacked the Biden administration as a whole. This better be a slam dunk criminal case, otherwise the Biden administration and the DOJ have crossed a line of no return. If they've got the goods, announce it. Otherwise, this search on a former president's home is a disgrace. Meanwhile, among Trump's opponents, praise for the Mar-a-Lago and speculation that Trump would be indicted circulated widely online. Indicted for what? Attention immediately focused on a little-known federal law that makes it a crime when someone who has custody of government documents or records willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, falsifies, or destroys them. They're not talking about the president. They're talking about records custodians. The president of the United States is not a records custodian. The president of the United States is a person who determines what records are and what records are not. They're not custodians. So that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. In January, this is where all this stuff starts to fold in on itself. In January, officials from the National Archives removed from Mar-a-Lago 15 boxes of records. No, they were sent back by the Trump administration. Some of those boxes were classified that Trump had taken with him when he left the White House in January of last year, 2 weeks after the storming of the Capitol. That's how you know it's New Yorker. Some of those documents contain information that is considered to be top secret, according to the Washington Post. Again, not a problem. The president has a top secret security clearance. Federal prosecutors then began a grand jury investigation and interviewed former White House staffers about Trump's actions, and a small group of agents visited Mar-a-Lago to look for documents. That happened this spring. Trump, in a statement issued after the raid, claimed that after working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. A federal judge, nonetheless, had ruled that investigators had probable cause that a crime had been committed and issued a search warrant. That's according to the New Yorker. That's not part of the quote. Well, it wasn't a federal judge, it was a federal magistrate. And there's a difference. So that's one of the things that we're keeping very close track on. Then there's this. It's been 2 days. We haven't heard anything from the Department of Justice. Calls are growing for the Department of Justice to release information on its Monday raid at Donald Trump's Florida home. This from Fox News. The country deserves a thorough and immediate explanation of what led to the events of Monday, said Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Attorney General Garland and the Department of Justice should already have provided answers to the American people and must do so immediately. Every day that goes by, every single day that goes by, this gets worse and worse and worse. It gets worse for the DOJ and the FBI. And R.A. Fleischer is completely correct. If they don't have the goods, if they don't have a real serious slam dunk case, they've crossed a line of no return. I was thinking about what you would do. I was thinking about what you would do with the FBI and the DOJ. There are already talks about defunding the FBI, which would be hypocritical among the people that are talking about how you simply cannot defund the police. Now they're going to defund the FBI? No. I think what you do is you say this. We'll put a hold on FBI funding, effective immediately until upper management changes. Upper management changes. And also, by the way, remind me to discuss the changes in the presidential elections that we have to make. I've been thinking about this for weeks. This just clarified it for me. I'm beginning to believe that the American people need to start voting for people that are currently appointed in order to clean up some of the mess in Washington, D.C. when it comes to politics. Remind me to talk about that, okay? Because that one's an important one. McConnell joined in demanding an explanation from the DOJ, very, very late and very, very lukewarm. Others, top Senate Republicans, former Democrat New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, former Vice President Mike Pence, House Intelligence Committee ranking member Mike Turner, and many, many, many more. Trump announced that his palatial residence had been raided and so on and so on. A source familiar told Fox News the raid occurred Monday morning, and that's more of the stuff that we already know. So how is President Trump doing? Well, Republican Study Committee Chairman Jim Banks met with former President Trump at Trump National Golf Club Bedminster, that's in New Jersey, it happened yesterday, and said the former commander-in-chief is very upbeat and that he's made up his mind about 2024, a decision he will make public in a matter of time. Banks is a Republican from Indiana, and nearly a dozen members of the House Republican Study Committee, including Representatives Brian Babin, Mike Kelly, Claudia Tenney, Victoria Spartz, Pat Fallon, Mike Carey, Lisa McClain, Michael Cloud, Randy Weber, Troy Nels, Aaron Huchin, a congressional candidate from Indiana, met with President Trump at the New Jersey retreat. He didn't seem defeated in the least bit. He was fired up, very upbeat. News of Trump's attitude just a day after the FBI raided his home in Palm Beach, Florida, was kind of surprising. It was a great 3-hour-long conversation about what House Republicans are doing now to win back the majority and what we're going to do with it when we win. You better have a plan. You better have a plan. You better have some action. You better start solving some of these problems. Far beyond this raid at Mar-a-Lago. The Republican Party better not muff it this time. They've muffed it the last 2 times. They have. The last 2 times they had power in Washington, D.C., they blew it. And I'm not going to forget it, and I'm not going to keep from reminding them that they did blow it. They can't do it again. It'll be the end of the party. He said we're going to like his decision about 2024 and a possible White House run. He's made up his mind. He said you're going to like his decision. It's only a matter of time before he'll make that decision known. Adding that Trump enjoyed encouragement from RSC members to get a decision out sooner rather than later. He only helps us win back more seats in November, said Banks. The Republican Party is bigger and stronger than ever before because of Donald Trump. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. So So here we are with all of this. And yes, people say, well, maybe the president knew what they were looking for. Okay, that's possible. That's possible. The only thing that I can say is that what we have here is we have some interesting silence. The DOJ silent, FBI silent, White House silent. Why? Why? You know, there's an amazing history of people absolutely sure that Donald Trump is guilty of something. And then they go investigate it and they find nothing. As a matter of fact, what they do in their search is expose themselves as deep state operatives, trying to do what they can to essentially disenfranchise the choice of the American people for president of the United States. That's their history. And yes, they manufactured evidence to get that done. And yes, they've tried to bug the president. Man, I tell you what. President of the United States cannot go back into, I don't know that he's ever going to go back to Mar-a-Lago. How could you do that? How could you do that? After the FBI spends an entire day in there? All kinds of technical experts in there? What did they do? Now, would they need to plant evidence there? No, unless they were planning on coming back. But as we've seen with Hunter Biden's laptop, for example, they've got all the evidence in the world of countless felonies. I mean, stuff we've seen in the open source, just in open source news. And they've done nothing with it. That's a demanufacturing of evidence. Would they manufacture evidence against Donald Trump? Yeah, they already have. This is a big mess they've created. They absolutely have created a gigantic mess. And they may have been gambling that they would go to Mar-a-Lago and find information, evidence that would bolster some other cases that they may be working on. The problem with that is, what if there isn't any? It sure would explain an awful lot of silence. And there's also something else going on. There are an awful lot of other people being silent. I'm going to tell you about those people coming up a little bit later on. But that's telling as well. What we have here is we have an amazing, perfect storm, a coalescence, if you will, of some very, very damaging things for not just the Biden administration, but the U.S. government in general, especially when it comes to executive branch agencies. Agencies weaponized during the Obama administration, used against political opposition, and that tradition seems to be continuing. And why wouldn't it be? Arguably, this bolsters the case that the same people that ran the Obama administration are now running the Biden administration. And what they also have is an advantage they didn't have during the Obama administration. President Obama, like it or not, is an American icon. Joe Biden, on the other hand, can be flushed down the toilet at will. They can simply blame all of this on him and say that it was, just a doddering of an old man. Oh, yeah? And so they don't have to worry about destroying an American icon. They'd just be destroying Joe Biden, something that he's been trying to do for the last 50 years. He's been trying to destroy himself for 50 years. And the destruction that he doesn't foist on himself, his family's glad to do. And then maybe that's why these people are doing such amazing things that we've never seen before. But I got to say, there's one other logical assumption we can make. Whoever's pushing the buttons on this is desperately afraid of Donald Trump and a second term of Donald Trump. Why? I mean, they've done everything they possibly could. They have pulled out every possible stop. They have done everything they possibly could to ruin this man. And all I can say is, He's not close to being ruined yet. Now, they may find something there. They may have a real case. They better. They absolutely better. Or you will hear me call for the dissolution of the FBI on this microphone. You will hear me, and once again, I think I'm going to go ahead and break the seal on what I'm talking about with regarding federal elections in the future. I think I'm going to do that. I'll do that next as we continue talking about this amazing mess that the left has created in this nation. It is so big, the cleanup is going to take years. In the case of the FBI, it may be the end. You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Chat room is cooking today. Lots of people watching the Wells Report, and I sincerely appreciate it. I do. They are trying to get a few of us so riled up that someone snaps and does something stupid. By the way, there was some reporting today that there had been death threats. Don't send death threats. Do not send death threats. Tell everybody you know to stop sending death threats. Anybody who sends death threats, or obviously they're just working for the other side. Stop sending death threats. Stop empowering more totalitarian oppression. Just stop it. Just absolutely stop it. Let's see. Let's see. Dems are protecting their own. The reason I state this is because they are still free. True. Let's see. I think this raid backfired because most independents now are for Trump, and some Democrats now have slightly changed their minds, in my opinion. I agree. This was a huge mistake. Unless they've got the goods, this was an ender. This is going to end a lot of different things. The only person in the administration who didn't know about the raid is Biden. They couldn't give him a chance to run his mouth. Why do you think he didn't have a public appearance until Monday, the day of the raid? Let's see. DOJ is not going to respond. They'll just keep quiet, especially if they don't have anything. They're in trouble. If they don't have anything, they're in trouble. They're silent because they messed up, and they are the worst at apologizing. They don't apologize. They double down. Obama made this statement to his greatest wish would be able to be in another place until somebody else tell somebody else what to do with the country. You think it's true? Because I think he's doing it right now, and I think somebody's paying him to do it. He doesn't need any money. Dissolve the FBI first, then the EPA, then the Department of Education. Yeah. You hate cliffhangers. I'll get to it here in just a couple of seconds. The IRS, too, a flat rate consumption tax. It makes too much sense. Yeah, flat rate tax. You don't need a consumption tax. 68 million went missing when President Obama was in office, but that was investigated. It was taken out of the slush fund. Obama is the one who created ISIS. Please wake up, America, please. The Dems have run out of manufacturing. They have run manufacturing out of the U.S. to other countries. Drugs are coming in from the outside of the U.S. because the U.S. government has allowed it. The Dems also want us to stay home and get free money, but that's not free. Those of us working and paying taxes are paying for lazy butts to stay home. Want to know how I would really upset them? I would find a way to have Trump's face carved into Mount Rushmore. Yeah, don't think you're not the only person that said that. If they had the goods, they would have leaked it by now. I believe you may be correct. That's the chat room. So let's talk a little bit about what I think we ought to be doing with federal elections. It's time for us, we the people of the United States, to change the paradigm of how everything works in Washington, D.C. There are too many politicians appointing too many highly placed bureaucrats. To begin with, I believe that every non-cabinet member, non-cabinet position in the United States government should be elected. That includes the Attorney General of the United States. There are attorneys general everywhere in the United States that are being elected by their states. It's time for us to add that to federal elections. It's also time for us, and this is assuming, by the way, that elections are actually honest. And as long as Dominion voting machines are there, and this is just my opinion, as long as Dominion voting machines are being used in the United States, we cannot reasonably or comfortably believe that our elections are honest. We can't. And I'm not saying that based on some idea that there's a vast conspiracy. What I'm saying that for is this reason and this reason only. They won't tell people how their machines work. It's an industry secret. They're disqualified. The entire European Union has disqualified them. Israel has disqualified them. The United States needs to disqualify them until they show exactly how those machines work and that they can prove that there's no backdoor into them. And they haven't done that, and that's a disqualifier for me. A disqualifier. So assuming that the elections are indeed honest, we need to start electing the Attorney General of the United States. We need to start electing Supreme Court justices. As a matter of fact, we, the people of the United States, we need to elect federal judges in our states. Because the politicians can't do it. There is way too much room for corruption. It's like this federal magistrate in Florida. I'm not saying that he's compromised by his work for Jeffrey Epstein. But isn't it fascinating that they wouldn't go to a federal judge in Florida? They went to a federal magistrate who just happened to have a past with Jeffrey Epstein. So you like your job? You're making a couple $100,000 a year, $300,000-$400,000 a year. Sign this paper. Do you think the DOJ and the FBI are capable of that kind of blackmail? Yeah, me too. It's not based on anything I know. It's not based on a conspiracy theory. It's based on their history. Yeah, they made a real mess of this. The question is the mess too big to clean up? I certainly hope it isn't. And I certainly hope we have people that are absolutely steely enough to be able to do it. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to hour number 2. Hour number 1, we spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out why so many people are saying so few things about the raid on Mar-a-Lago, President Donald Trump's palatial and private home. So far, nobody's saying anything. The FBI's not saying anything. DOJ's not saying anything. Nobody's saying anything. Why? The Biden administration not saying anything. How come? There are only two reasons. One, they've got the goods on President Trump. They've got the goods on President Trump. That's a possibility. By the way, the president sat for a deposition with the New York Attorney General. He did so today, and he invoked his Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination. Now, this is the same guy who said, why in heaven's name would you ever plead the Fifth if you were innocent? Today, he said, now I know why. Because when you are the subject of a nonstop political witch hunt, you have to do your best not to give them anything that they can turn something into. Not that they have any problem doing it. I asked last hour, during the first hour, and by the way, go get it if you missed it. I asked last hour whether or not you believe that the FBI and the DOJ would plant or manufacture evidence. I also asked whether or not you believe that the FBI would install listening devices in the home of President Donald Trump. Now, remember, as a part of this supposed search warrant, we haven't seen it yet. Now, from what I understand, the Trump family has it. They haven't released it yet, which is also instructive. But they went through the wardrobe of Melania Trump. Did they leave listening devices in there? Did they leave listening devices all throughout the building? Remember, this is the same group of people that wanted to send someone wearing a wire into the Oval Office to try to get incriminating evidence on Donald Trump so they could use the 25th Amendment removal and disenfranchisement of the people who elected him in 2016. These are not conspiracy theorist questions. These are questions based on what we've seen. That's basically what we're looking at here. I have to ask these questions. Mike Lee of Utah has some questions too. We'll get to that coming up in just a couple of seconds. But while we're on the subject of people not saying anything, guess who else is not saying anything as a group? Vulnerable House Democrats. They're not saying a word. There are 21 Democrats running for re-election in districts considered toss-ups, as well as lean and are likely Republican, and asked for their reaction to the unannounced raid that has drawn sharp criticism from both sides of the aisle. Fox News did receive a response from a spokesperson of Dina Titus from Nevada that simply said, we're continuing to monitor the developing situation. That is not an answer. Representative Elaine Lurie of Virginia also reacted to the raid on social media as well as an appearance on MSNBC. Quote, the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago is an unprecedented action in reaction to an unprecedented presidency. We have never had a president who sought to overturn an election and summon a mob to D.C. as Donald Trump did on January 6th. That's not helping her re-election chances. She wrote that on Monday, including a video clip of her discussion about the raid with left-wing host Rachel Maddow. Yeah, the raid has been widely condemned, including by Democrats like disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, as critics have called for the FBI, Department of Justice, and White House to explain why they did what they did. So getting back to the two reasons why they did this raid, it's one, they really have something. That would also explain the silence. The other reason is they don't have anything, and they want it to blow over. And the mainstream media will absolutely let it go away. Just let it fade away. And they'll say, well, we can't really talk about it because we don't want to interfere with the election now 90 days away. Or something along that line. But there are an awful lot of people not saying a whole lot of things. And that is instructive. Now, do I believe, what are the odds? What are the odds of, A, they really have something versus they don't have anything and they're trying to figure out how to explain it? I would say it would be about somewhere between 20 and 30% that they really have something on President Trump. That guy's careful. He's been under investigation his entire life. There was a story yesterday that was really fascinating. They said, yes, the Congress of the United States can have a judge ruled that the Congress of the United States could have President Trump's mysteriously missing tax returns. And it disappeared just as quickly as it showed up. Yeah, nobody said a word about that. You know why? Because in order to get them, they're going to have to go to the IRS. The IRS that they just invested billions in to give us more IRS agents. Because the IRS has all those. They've been looking at them for years. I said on this broadcast that what people need to do what President Trump needs to do says, look, all you have to do is tell the IRS to sign off on my tax returns, and I will be more than happy to turn them over. But it would be stupid for the president to turn over his tax returns when the IRS hasn't ruled. When we see the absolutely ridiculous, borderline melodramatic garbage surrounding how politicians can turn anything into anything, the politicians would now have to trash the IRS and their investigative procedures because they've been putting Donald Trump under perpetual audit for over a decade. So they got themselves in quite a little spot here. They got themselves in a real mess. So what do I think that they've gotten themselves in a real mess and they don't have an explanation? I would say that that's somewhere around 65%. So the final odds, 65-35. 35, they've got something on President Trump. 65, they don't have something on President Trump and they whiffed again. Which brings us to Republicans. And I'm going to be, for those people that think this is a partisan broadcast, I'm about to give you some information that may dissuade you from that opinion. Republicans vow ramped up oversight of the Biden administration after the FBI raid of Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Congressional Republicans, this from Fox News, congressional Republicans are vowing to ramp up oversight of the Biden White House and the Department of Justice after the FBI's raid of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was the first to make the pledge late Monday after news broke that Mar-a-Lago had been raided by federal agents. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization, said House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. When Republicans take back the House, we will conduct immediate oversight of their department, know the facts, and leave no stone unturned. That's what he says. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who initially dodged the matter, called yesterday for a thorough and immediate explanation of the raid. Lukewarm at best. But then again, he's a lukewarm guy. Attorney General Garland and the Department of Justice should already have provided answers to the American people and must do so immediately, said McConnell. I said that we were expecting a press conference from the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, the day after the raid. I had everything ready. I had everything ready in this studio to air that press conference live. Nothing. Nothing from the FBI. Nothing from the Biden administration, except go talk to the DOJ. When people asked about what was going on with Mar-a-Lago, well, we don't have any comment on that. You need to discuss that with the DOJ, who's not saying a word. Absolutely outrageous. GOP Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who previously raised concerns about the politicization of the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, is expected to lead the oversight probe if Republicans retake the majority through his position at the Senate Judiciary Committee. He would be the chairman of that committee. Senate GOP leaders have remained quiet about their plans, unlike House Republicans. Sources say House GOP leadership is weighing a number of tactics to expand DOJ accountability, provided they win the majority in November. One idea, which has been floated, is to create a special panel to investigate the Justice Department and other agencies for overreach or abuse of power. Although the idea is favored by some lawmakers, House Judiciary and Oversight Committees have already have purview. Yeah, they already have purview of such matters. What have they done with it? Nothing. The panels are also stacked with lawmakers that have waited years to exercise their authority over the federal government's conduct of a bevy of topics, including immigration and coronavirus. Given that reality, GOP leaders are unlikely to try and pry away even a portion of that power from the committees. A number of GOP lawmakers told Fox News that while it was way too early to tell, they did favor skirting the existing committee process. They did not favor skirting the existing committee process. Regardless of how the process shapes up, a majority of House Republicans appear united behind holding the DOJ and the rest of the Biden administration accountable. We will see. Then there is an opinion piece that has been authored by Senator Mike Lee. On August 8th, 2022, the FBI executed a search warrant on former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. On August 8th of 2022, the FBI executed a search warrant on former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence. With merely 91 days until the midterm elections, it's incumbent on the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to provide the country with immediate answers. Every day spent in a season of speculation adds to the growing claims the search was politically motivated. As a lawyer, former federal prosecutor, and current member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I have these questions. Question number 1. Did Attorney General Merrick Garland personally sign off on the action? Question 2. Why break into the safe at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home rather than seize it, take it into custody, and seek a warrant to open it? 3. Why execute a search warrant rather than seeking the items through an informal process such as a subpoena? 4. If this is genuinely about presidential records, why would the former president who was in charge of declassifying documents be subject to prosecution for retaining custody of those same documents? It's important to note that classification authority belongs to the President of the United States, not to the bureaucrats at the National Archives. Great question. Question number 5 is, if this is the product of growing political weaponization of the federal law enforcement agency, shouldn't all Americans be outraged by the Democrat plan to hire an additional 87,000 federal agents? IRS agents, in fact? Number 6, how is this aggressive action defensible in the light of the FBI and DOJ's treatment of Hillary Clinton, who was never subjected to such an invasion intrusive of her privacy, even though she mishandled classified material and destroyed evidence? Number 7, why should we assume the federal bureaucracy isn't targeting Republicans when the FBI and DOJ have taken no action regarding flagrant violations of the law by pro-abortion extremists threatening the Supreme Court justices at their homes? And question number 8, did FBI Director Christopher Wray intentionally wait to carry out the raid until after his oversight hearing with the Senate Judiciary Committee last week? I asked him whether he was concerned with warrantless backdoor searches under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. He seemed unperturbed. Yeah, those are great questions. And I bet you the answers aren't nearly so great, especially when it concerns the home of the brave, the land of the free, and the home of the brave. The Constitution is about to catch up. We'll see if it actually does. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Call me. Call me if you have a comment. Call me if you are taking issue with something that I've said. Why am I looking at that camera when I'm over there? So we were talking about Republicans making a brave noise, vowing to increase oversight on the Biden administration, and so on and so on. Forgive me if I'm a bit cynical about whether or not they can actually pull that off. You see, the Republicans are really, really good at looking really, really good. But they're really, really bad at actually doing good things. They're horrible at it. Obama wants to do Obamacare. He wants to set up socialized medicine in the United States. The Republicans say, no, that's awful. We're going to repeal it. It actually gets passed. And then they say, we're going to repeal it. 73 times they say they're going to repeal it. And then they blow it. They can't get it done. They don't have anything to replace it with, which is a simple statement. All they had to do was write this statement. The Republican plan is this: all costs for healthcare among any healthcare provider and all costs for any kinds of medicine, drugs, pharmaceuticals will be made public. That is it. That is all. All of that information will be public. Every healthcare provider must publish their prices. That's all you got to do. That's the Republican plan for government healthcare and nothing else. Because what we saw with regards to COVID-19 gives us a perfect example of what happens when the government has anything to do with healthcare. It becomes a political toy. And I just don't happen to believe that people's lives should be political toys. How about you? Getting back to the Republicans. The people of the United States need to have a government that operates in their best interests, not in the political interests of the government itself. The Republican Party knows this. As a matter of fact, I actually told the Republican Party this myself in a classified meeting that I haven't talked about that happened years and years and years ago. I said, do the people's business. And if you don't do the people's business, a populist will sweep past you like you're standing still. And guess what? We got Donald Trump a few years later. They didn't believe me. They didn't believe me that conservatism had a place in the United States. Well, with every government bungling, conservatism looks better every second. And the Republicans are not conservative. They appear conservative. They hint at being conservative. They profess to be conservative, right up to the point where they actually have to be conservative. And then they bungle it. I fully expect them to bungle this. Oh, they're going to do some oversight? Oh, yeah? Really? Yeah, well, I'm going to go a few states north from where I am right this very moment to Missouri. I want you to show me. And if you don't show me this time, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to travel to every Tea Party that's left in Texas. And I'm going to take a whole bunch of voter registration cards with me. And I'm going to implore them to join the Conservative Party of Texas and create our own slate of candidates. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start working for the Conservative Party of the United States. And we will leave the Republican Party behind to be a mishmash of guys who simply want to say one thing and then do another. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for joining. Take two. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You can chat with us. You can call us. You can chat with us. Let's see. Get to some of these texts. Let's see. It's shocking that President Obama got passed in the first place. Judge Roberts, Obamacare, sorry. Judge Roberts, then John McCain, ignored the people's mandate to repeal it. Another says they couldn't hold Hillary accountable, and that was the easiest case to be made. She violated the Espionage Act. It was Section 7 of the Espionage Act 16 times. It was an open and shut case. But James Comey came out and said, she's stupid. And, but it's not James Comey's job to make that judgment. His job is to enforce the law, which he did not do. And suddenly now we're going after Donald Trump and a few boxes of records? Seriously? Let's see. Where's John Cornyn? Silent. Let's see. Cornyn really was a conservative when he was first elected. Remember back in the days of Ann Richards. True. That's absolutely true. Look, John Cornyn has been a great senator for Texas, but I think he's done. And there are a lot of people that are calling for term limits. When I said that we should be electing the Attorney General of the United States, and we should be electing Supreme Court justices for 12-year terms, assuming our elections are fair and true, and we can't make that assumption right now. No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We just can't. Like I said before, the disqualifier is a Dominion voting machine. They refuse to tell us how it works. As long as they refuse to tell us how it works, that's a disqualifier for using them for any reason whatsoever. Ever. Just like the European Union has done, just like Israel has done, just like a lot of countries around the world have done. It's time to stop. Go to paper ballots. Paper ballots. One-day voting. I don't have any problem with early voting. A week. But once Election Day comes and goes, the election's over. And if you didn't get your ballot in, well, that's on you. We don't have mail-in ballots. We have absentee ballots where you actually have to show up someplace and drop it off. Back in the good old days, that's the way we used to do things. And until we get back to that, we don't know whether our elections are real or not. So anything that I say about electing anybody, we have to first make sure that the elections are correct. One last thing about President Trump. It comes from the Wall Street Journal. Monday's unannounced Federal Bureau of Investigation search of Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home isn't a moment for anyone to cheer. The Justice Department is unleashing political furies it cannot control and may not understand. And the risks for the department and the country are as great as they are for Donald Trump. Listen to this. As everyone knows by now, FBI law enforcement action of this kind against a former American president is unprecedented. Monday's search needed a judicial warrant in service of probable cause in a criminal probe. The Justice Department has provided few details beyond what has been leaked to reporters. It's hard to judge what the FBI was looking for. Well, it's right there on the search warrant and the accompanying affidavit from someone. We need those papers. From what we understand, the Trump family has those papers. Please release them, Mr. President. Please release them at your earliest opportunity. The media leaks say the search was related to potential mishandling of classified documents or violations of the Presidential Records Act. If that's true, then the raid looks like prosecutorial overkill and a bad mistake. And every day that the DOJ, the FBI, and the White House say absolutely nothing, that mistake gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Document disputes are typically settled in negotiation. That's how Mr. Trump's disagreement with the National Archives had been proceeding. Mr. Trump already turned in 15 boxes of documents. The National Archives wants to know if the former president retained classified material that he shouldn't have. This is what appears to have triggered the FBI search, but it's far from clear why this couldn't be settled cooperatively or at most with a subpoena. Didn't someone at Justice point out that a search in this case would draw comparisons to Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified information before her 2016 presidential campaign? She was never prosecuted, as Mr. Trump was quick to point out. Unless Mr. Trump's offense involves a serious risk to national security, his offense, half of America may see the Trump search as an example of unequal justice. How could it be anything else? This may not be the full FBI story. Multiple media reports suggest that Justice had opened up a grand jury probe into the events of January 6th, and Mr. Trump may be a target of that investigation. The House committee investigating January 6th has been cheering for a prosecution, and the political and media pressure is intense on Attorney General Merrick Garland to indict Mr. Trump. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to indict him for. The FBI search may be a fishing expedition to find evidence related to January 6th. Why is that important? Because if it was a fishing expedition, that renders the entire probable cause requirement for a search warrant based on oath or affirmation as null and void. You just don't want the FBI to go out and start serving these faux search warrants without any kind of probable cause. And every day that goes by, it looks more and more and more like that is exactly what has happened. On the public evidence so far, a January 6th indictment would be a legal stretch. Political responsibility is not the same as criminal liability. In our view, the evidence would have to show that Mr. Trump was criminally complicit in the day's violence at the Capitol. He was not. In my opinion, he was not. And the January 6th committee proved that he was not, or he'd be indicted already. Given its inherently political nature, the burden of proof is especially high for indicting a former president, all the more so for the administration of the opposing party. The evidence had better be overwhelming, not merely enough to convince a 12-person jury in the District of Columbia, but enough to convince a majority of the American public. Then there is the fraught history between Mr. Trump and the FBI and justice. The Russia collusion probe was a fiasco of FBI abuse by process and public deception. This is the Wall Street Journal today. The Russia collusion probe was a fiasco of FBI abuse, of process and public deception. Current FBI Director Christopher Wray was Mr. Trump's choice to succeed the disastrous James Comey, but the Bureau is still fighting a serious credibility problem. That the Mar-a-Lago raid occurred only about 90 days from a national election also increases the political suspicion. Democrats want to keep Mr. Trump front and center in the midterm campaign, which is why the January 6th committee is continuing into the autumn. Anyone who thinks an indictment and trial of Mr. Trump would go smoothly is in for a rude surprise. Millions of his supporters will see this as vindication of his charges against the deep state. And who knows how they'll respond? Has Mr. Garland even considered that? Worse in the long term is the precedent being set and payback it's likely to inspire. Once the Rubicon of prosecuting a former president has been crossed, especially with the alleged offense and evidence are less than compelling, every future president will be a target. William Barr, Mr. Trump's second attorney general, widely resisted pressure to indict political actors without a very strong case. The next Republican attorney general will not be as scrupulous. Democrats may also be wrong in their calculation about how a prosecution would affect Mr. Trump's future. The FBI search alone makes it more likely that Trump will run again for president, if only to vindicate himself. He will run as a martyr, and even Republicans who want to turn the page on the former president may be repelled by what they see as a political prosecution. All of this risks compounding the baleful pattern of the last 6 years. Mr. Trump is accused of violating political norms, sometimes fairly, sometimes not. The left violates norms in response. Polarization increases. Public faith in institutions and peaceful settlement of political differences erodes even further. The FBI search on Mr. Trump suggests that Mr. Garland may be committed to pursuing and indicting Mr. Trump. If so, he's taking the country on a perilous road. There is much ruin in a nation, but no one should want to test the limits of that ruin here in America. It's a brilliant editorial piece. Wall Street Journal opinion. You should read it yourself. This is A huge, huge problem for this nation. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he has reason to be extremely, extremely well versed on all of this. That's all I'm going to tell you about him. But I was talking to him on Monday evening, and I said, "What do you think about this?" And he gave me some opinions that I'll keep to myself. But what I said was this: I remember the night that Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated, and how very strongly I was affected by that, along with the assassination of Martin Luther King that same year. And I really thought the country was coming apart. I was 10. That's the same feeling I had when I heard about this raid against President Trump. That 1968 would show us the absolute dregs of what American law enforcement was capable of. In that case, it was the Chicago police wielding riot sticks, beating people. I mean, it was outrageous. Again, my blood ran cold when I saw all that. 1968 was bad. But what's fascinating to me is that a lot of the same political actors that were the authors of that horrifying year seem to be willing to be the authors of this horrifying year. We, the people of the United States, find ourselves in kind of a box. Once again, we all say, well, we've got an election coming up in 90 days. We'll be able to speak with our votes. Will we? We don't know. We don't have any idea. That there was a political divide in the nation having to do with politicians against we the people and Donald Trump allowed the Republican Party to basically stand off and let the thugs of the Democrat Party do their work. And we saw it. We saw it in the summer of 2020. Send out the thugs. Just exactly what they did in 1968. That was because of the Vietnam War. That was because all of that. That's when we saw the birth of fake news. Also, strangely enough, in 1968. And so what we've seen is the left sending out the thugs. And they did it Monday at Mar-a-Lago. The only caveat is maybe they had something. But if they did, why aren't they talking about it? Every day that goes by is a stinging criticism, a stinging indictment, not of President Trump, but of the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the incipient weaselism of the Biden administration. That weaselism is obvious. President Biden is not running the show. There are unseen characters in the background, people I call the Presidium. Who are those people? One thing is for sure, those people did not appear on a ballot in 2020. And yet they're pulling the strings. And they are setting up the President of the United States as a Paschal lamb to be slaughtered on the altar of leftist politics in these United States. That's the way I see it. What do you think? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Is there more to the story? Yeah, I would say so. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, the former President of the United States, took the Fifth Amendment guarantees against self-incrimination during a deposition for the New York Attorney General today. This was the guy that said, "Why would you take the Fifth if you were innocent?" And then he said today, after he did so, he said, "Well, when you're the subject of a political witch hunt that has gone on forever, that's one of the reasons why you would do that. I have no reason to disbelieve that." This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You can also join us on the chat room. Many people have, and I sincerely appreciate their participation and your participation in this broadcast. So there was good economic news today, sort of. It is that the July inflation rate fell to 8.5%. The Consumer Price Index report shows, but small businesses continue to struggle, and they will continue to struggle. This is from USA Today. Pablo Soto long harbored a passion for the culinary arts. It led he and his wife to open Don Pablo's in uptown Chicago in February. The Chilean restaurant offers empanadas, corn pies, desserts. But Soto said the eatery is now struggling to tackle high inflation. He raised the price of menu items in the past several months, he said. but ingredients have increased in cost. He said he had to lay off a worker in May because he now has fewer customers, leaving him with just 3 employees. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of, and this was why when they were talking about how great unemployment was in the United States, I said that's temporary. And now, by the way, the Biden administration, they're saying, my goodness gracious, inflation has stopped. Maybe it's topped out. No, it hasn't topped out. Because they just spent $780 billion more dollars to throw into the United States economy. The reason that inflation is at 8.5% is that people aren't going to Don Pablo's in Chicago or any of their other favorite restaurants. That includes this household. Fortunately, we don't suffer much because Susan is the greatest cook in history. I mean, she's the greatest culinary artist not doing it for a living in these United States. It's simple. This is not because of government policy. And oh, by the way, what in the hell is the government doing, having to do with anything regarding economic policy in the United States? The people who are trying to dictate economic policy in the United States are over $30 trillion overdrawn in their bank account. Why are they doing anything having to do with the United States economy? They need to back off. But then again, I've been saying that for a while too. And by the way, inflation, it fell to 8.5%. Yeah, but it's still 8.5%. It hasn't gone anywhere. It may be taking a breather because people have adjusted. They're not buying as many groceries. They're not burning as much gas. More people are working from home again. As I'm often heard to say, nothing in the universe is without balance. Shutting down the United States economy because of COVID-19 gave all of us a new place to work. I'm working from my house right now and probably will for the balance of my professional life. There's no reason for me to go anywhere else. I have state-of-the-art equipment in here. I know it doesn't look like it. The studio's under construction. Give me a break. But believe me, there's some serious equipment in here. Okay? I don't need to go to a broadcast facility for better equipment. I've got it right here. And so people are doing less. Consequently, the economy is cooling. And also, by the way, don't forget, the Fed has raised interest rates 1.5% in the last 2 months. They're going to raise them again, propelling the nation into a recession in order to control inflation, which is still 8.5%. The president is talking about how his policies are working. Gas prices are down. Yeah, because nobody's burning any of it. I hate to raise my prices. Raising prices is something that's going to hurt someone, even if it's $1. When people have kids, people have more than one mouth to feed. You don't want to be the one that actually makes things worse for these people. That's why he's down to 3 employees. Running a restaurant is brutally difficult. His work hours, all day. All day. Inflation in the U.S. fell slightly to 8.5%, down from an historic high of 9.1% in June. 0.6%. Although the drop brought hope that prices may surge, the price surge may have peaked. Small businesses across the country have continued to struggle. If the country were to enter a recession, this could impact Don Pablo's negatively as people dine out less frequency. Soto thinks that's very frightening for a small business owner. And by the way, those 87,000 new IRS agents will be visiting Don Pablo's to make sure that that tip income is being properly taxed. Seriously. And by the way, somebody did point out that the IRS just bought a whole bunch of ammunition and pistols and so on and so forth. 87,000 new people to carry them. You don't suppose there's a connection there, do you? Why would they have to worry about defending themselves? Boy, these are tough questions to answer, aren't they? Does it drive you crazy that I ask them? Or maybe it doesn't drive you crazy that I ask them. You're listening to the Wells Report. We'll be back with hour number 3 in just a moment. Thanks for being with us today. Seriously, God bless you all. Thank you very much for being here. I'll be back with more in just a couple of minutes. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact. We also point out bias. That's part of the analysis. I make commentary. That's not the news. Just my opinion. Just as valuable as yours. And that's the debate. With the debate, you get a chance to interact. This is the only interactive news broadcast in the entire United States. You can call me right now at 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You can also find us on chat. We got a chat room going, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I knew a waitress in the 80s that got audited over her tips. She had to pay $7. Let's see what else. The intro was too loud, says Lois Floyd. No. Turn your computer down, Lois. It's okay. We work really, really hard to make sure that the levels are perfect, but thank you very much. Let's see. Let's keep rolling. So we've been in the first 2 hours. By the way, we've done 2 other hours. If you missed those, go back and get them because it's really good. I hate to say that myself, but it is. Those 2 hours are really, really good. Check them out. If you like this show, share it with your friends. It's important. This broadcast is important. We get to have the conversation that they don't want us to have right here. Because we're not playing games. We're not creating $41 million worth of debt with conspiracy theories and trying to trash everything that is the United States government. No. We're doing the news. We're doing the news. As Will Rogers famously said, all I know is what I read in the papers. But I've got a brain and the will to use it. And so do you. So let's have that conversation here on the Wells Report. Why are the Democrats so afraid of Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump is at the center of United States politics. Since his first ride down the escalators in Trump Tower in New York, he's been at the forefront of American politics. And yeah, he's probably going to be at the center of American politics for some time to come. Especially if yesterday's primary elections in 4 states, Connecticut, Minnesota, Vermont, and Wisconsin, have anything to say about it. This is from USA Today. Those elections determine who's running in November's midterms in an election that will decide how far President Joe Biden can advance his agenda in the second half of his term. The August 9th contests continue to show Donald Trump's might as the GOP kingmaker. Republicans rallied around the former president a day after this amazing FBI raid at Mar-a-Lago. By the way, still nothing from the DOJ, the FBI, or the Biden administration. I'm beginning to believe with every day that passes, I'm beginning to believe that they have a real problem. And it's self-inflicted. I could be wrong. And believe me, if President Trump has done something worthy of a federal indictment, I will report it here. As a matter of fact, if he hasn't done anything worthy of a federal indictment, I will report it here. Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to come up with some sort of case, any kind of case. And with every day that passes, that FBI search at Mar-a-Lago looks more and more and more like a fishing expedition. They're trying to hang something on the president so they can disqualify him for further use. Isaac says the DOJ can't discuss an ongoing case. Sure they can. It's not like a case, but it's not a DOJ case against you or me, Isaac. It's a case against a former president. You better have the goods. You absolutely better have the goods because it looks really political and it looks really bad, and you know it. He also says Democrats don't want another insurrection. That's why they're afraid of Donald Trump. If they don't want another insurrection, then they had better stop. And by the way, it wasn't an insurrection the first time. It was just a peaceful protest. is even more peaceful than the protests that were called peaceful protests during the summer of 2020. The only person that got killed was a woman who got shot in the face by a federal agent who was extolled for his brilliant decision making. Was she armed? No. Where was the deadly force need? No. None. What about the 6 cops? You mean the suicides and the natural causes? Those are suicides and natural causes. Was it bad that the police got hurt? Yes. And as I have said, based on all of this, and I'm going to say it again right now, the only weapons that we, the people of the United States who believe that this is a dramatic abuse of power, all we need do is 1, arrive, 2, bring copies of the Constitution and American flag with you, 3, sing the national anthem like a bird. It's not going to be 15,000 people on the Capitol grounds. It's going to be 10 million or more. If they don't want another problem, then they had better stop poking the bear. And that's not what they're doing. This double down garbage? Yeah. That's not going to work this time. And oh, by the way, since you're there, okay? Since you're there, you once barbecued me for saying that the Democrats were going to pursue a scorched earth policy with regards to President Trump. Here we are. This is what it looks like. Once again, if President Trump has done something bad, believe me, I will report it here. Just like I reported the fact that during a deposition in New York City, or in New York, with the New York Attorney General, he declared the Fifth Amendment multiple times. This after saying, why would you declare the Fifth Amendment when you're innocent? And then he said today, I know why now. Because if you're the subject of a political witch hunt, you don't want to give them any ammunition. And that is a good thing. It's the Wells Report. Welcome to the broadcast. Who's this?
You know who this is.
It's Isaac.
It is Isaac.
How are you, my friend? Are you on the speakerphone?
Hold on.
Take me off the speakerphone.
How's that?
Well, doesn't sound that much different. I just need to hear your magnificent voice.
Okay. Well, I'm keep it short. I'm keep it pithy, as one of your colleagues in radio, Bill O'Brien, used to say. If Donald Trump, who we would never know there was a raid on his house until he put out the message on Truth. If Donald Trump is so innocent in all this, he's the victim. Why don't he just release the affidavit and the search warrant?
Okay. Now whoa, stop. Let me answer that question. First of all, we would have heard about it if President Trump hadn't put it out, because you just can't hide 30 police officers at Mar-a-Lago with appropriate or inappropriate police cars with flashing lights. They had a Coast Guard Zodiac boat that was armed with a 240 Bravo machine gun floating in the water right off the Mar-a-Lago estate. Seriously? What? Is one of the Trump operatives going to swim with all that classified information? Swim right out of there so that the feds couldn't grab it? No, it was ridiculous. It was overkill to the max. But anyway, yeah. Should Donald Trump release the affidavit? Absolutely. Unless he can't. And should he release this? Let me finish. Let me finish. Isaac, you've got to let me finish. You have to let me finish, Isaac. You have to let me finish. Here's what I'm going to say, and then I'll let you talk. Here's what I'm going to say. He needs to release the affidavit. He needs to release the search warrant. Unless he doesn't want to. And if he doesn't want, no, let me finish. If he doesn't want to, then he has to explain why he doesn't want to. It could be as simple as, I'm not going to do it. This was their mess. They're going to do it because sooner or later they're going to. Then they're going to have to explain the results of their search. Now it's your turn. Hello.
I told you, as I told you the last time we talked, the actions that took place before January 6th, the actions of taking classified documents, the actions of him falsifying documents, asking Jeffrey Clark to be the guy to lead the.
He didn't falsify documents.
After Barr resigned,
he didn't falsify documents. The only people involved,
all this is coming back to bite him.
The only people that falsified documents, listen to me, the only people that falsified documents were the FBI. Now go ahead.
No, he did.
No, he didn't.
If you watched the hearing, which you didn't, it made it clear. Rosen and Donahue said they presented a document. They don't know where it came from. Sent to the officials in Georgia, stating that the election was fraudulent.
If they didn't know where it came from, why are you blaming President Trump?
Because he had it at the meeting.
Which document are you talking about?
Again, you didn't watch the hearing.
No, I didn't watch the hearing because it wasn't a hearing. It wasn't a hearing.
Okay, well,
there was no give and take.
I don't want to get that arguing with you. You don't think it was relevant or necessary? It was unfair. Okay,
it was.
I know, Will. I have been right on a lot of things in this case, and you refuse to listen, and that's okay.
I'm listening.
And this is the next step. And again, if he's so innocent, prove it. Release the documents.
Hey, how about this?
No,
hang on a second.
Release that.
No, I'm sorry. I got to stop you again.
He got raided and they took things.
I got to stop you again.
What was taken?
I have to stop you again. In this country, who is responsible for proving guilt? Does someone who is charged with something have to prove innocence? Or do the people who are charging somebody with something in this country have to prove guilt? Which is it?
The government or the police official have to prove that the person is guilty. Now, good point. Now, let me give you another point. If you're innocent and you know you have done nothing wrong, and you know it's being politicized across the nation, wouldn't you put your facts out there first to get your story out there first?
Stop. Okay, stop.
Go ahead and go a step further.
Let me answer that. There are two answers. One, it's not up to him to prove his innocence. It's up to the government to prove his guilt. That's thing number one. Thing number two, and this was something that my mother said, just because I'm innocent doesn't mean I don't have rights. Donald Trump has rights.
Right.
Whether he's innocent or not. The man has rights. Hang on a second. Hang on. You don't raid the guy who's responsible for determining what's classified and what's not classified for keeping classified documents. It just doesn't make any sense. Hang on. We've got to go to a break. We have to go to the break. We have to go to a break. We got to go to a break. Isaac. Okay. Back in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Isaac wanted to talk, so when I say call 817-379-2172, do it. I will answer the phone. We will talk. By the way, when you say something, it's a conversation. You say something, I say something, you say something, I say something. Don't talk over each other. We can't. You can't monologue on the show. So make a point, and then I'll respond. And so on. Okay? So there you go. Look, and Gail's got it right. Why do I put Isaac on? Well, because one, he's an honest man. He truly believes what he says. And he does give us a perspective. He gives us a perspective, and it's essential. It's essential. We have to listen to the other side. We have to listen to the other side. Everybody who's a Democrat is not wrong. Everybody who's a Republican is not right. But I got to tell you, everybody in politics, I have real problems with that. Especially in a government that doesn't operate to the benefit of the American people. And that's this one. They operate in and of themselves for their own political agendas, and they spend our money like it's theirs. And it's not. There's accountability in truth. And that's what we do here. And you can't have truth. You can't have truth unless you listen to the other side. And I got to be perfectly honest with you. Okay? Isaac points out that I watched probably the first hour of the January 6th committee when I realized that this wasn't a committee, it wasn't a hearing, it was a lynch mob. And I don't listen to the wailing of lynch mobs. And that's all this is. That's all this is. So all I can say is that I'm not going to be like the January 6th committee. I'm not going to shut out people who say things I don't like. I'm not even going to shut out people who catch me getting something wrong. Man, I did that yesterday. I didn't think that Sandy Berger faced any kind of real sanctions for his mishandling of classified information. I didn't think he faced anything. It turns out he got fined $50,000. He was put on 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, and he had to give up his law license. Okay, now what I had in my head was that Sandy Berger didn't go to jail. Okay, that's true. He didn't go to jail. He got probation. But that was a federal misdemeanor. And by the way, the Constitution talks about impeachment, high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, I know in that language it's high crimes and high misdemeanors. Obviously, it wasn't a high misdemeanor. But once again, this tells you the thinness of this case against Donald Trump. The thinness of this case. And what we have discovered is that everybody that's trying to nail Donald Trump with one thing or another made a miscalculation. They were very, very sure that Trump was guilty of something. And so far, he hasn't been. And what they've done is they have twisted the U.S. code. They've used the Department of Justice as a weapon. They've used the FBI as a weapon. They've used the IRS as a weapon. They've used CIA as a weapon. They've used the Department of Homeland Security as a weapon. It should be that agency should be renamed to the Department of Democrat Homeland Security. And it looks worse every day. Every single day. It's true. Absolutely true. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We got more coming up in just a couple of seconds. We are going to discuss why the Democrats are so afraid of Donald Trump. And we're going to talk a little bit about the primaries yesterday. And that's next on the Wells Report. I don't know why I do that either. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. If you're listening on radio, I was just waving my hands around. I got this on video, and if you want to see it, all you got to do is go to YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Twitch. There's some other ones, but I haven't heard from them. I'm trying to figure out if anybody actually sees this thing. Yeah. What? Arthur Davenport just called me a dork. What? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't TikTok worthy, but that little hand dance wasn't dorky. Jeez. Let's see. Isaac just said that Republican presidents have spent more than Democrat presidents. Not true. Let's see. $11.7 trillion between President Obama and President Biden, and Trump, $7 billion in 4 years. And by the way, Trump had to deal with something called COVID-19. Those problems did not exist. Although I got to be honest with you, Joe Biden had to deal with it. More people have died from COVID-19 since he took office than since Donald Trump was in office. Everything that Joe Biden said about the vaccinations, untrue. He's been boosted twice, and he's gotten 2 shots, and he's gotten COVID twice. Twice. So, there. Yeah. I'm kidding. I got to get to this news, okay? Will you quit distracting me? Oh, and Lois signs off on that particular news, that particular music bed that I just played as being okay. Thank you. Thank you, Eagle Ear. Why are the Democrats afraid of Donald Trump? This from USA Today. Tuesday's primaries in 4 states, Connecticut, Minnesota, Vermont, and Wisconsin, determine who's running in November's midterms in an election that will decide how far Joe Biden can advance his presidential agenda in the second half of the term. The August 9th contests, now listen to this. Now remember, this is USA Today. The August 9th contest continued to show that President Trump might be the GOP kingmaker that Democrats fear the most. Democrats rallied around the former president the day after the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago. The former president's influence during a string of GOP primaries this year continued with a victory by Tim Michels, who Trump had endorsed over an establishment candidate who had the backing of former Vice President Mike Pence. By the way, that was in Wisconsin. Okay. And I gotta say something here. Okay. Now, I'm not a Republican, but Donald Trump and Mike Pence need to bury the hatchet. They need to bury the hatchet. And before one endorses one candidate and another endorses another candidate, what they need to do is they need to figure out which is the best candidate between the two of them. Where they can't agree, that's fine. But they need to start agreeing. All right? Now, I'm not a big believer in electing Republicans either. Okay? I still haven't seen them do anything. I've heard them talk. I've heard them promise. I have heard them angry at the terrible state of whatever it is that they're talking about at the moment. But I keep waiting for solutions. And I don't see any. And until they start coming up with solutions for these problems, Republicans are valueless. Democrats are dangerous. Republicans are valueless. And I want, if you don't remember anything else on this broadcast, remember that. Wells today said the Democrats were dangerous. It's actually the leftists. It's not the Democrats. It's the leftists. But because the Democrats won't throw the leftists out of their party, they own them. So, Democrats are dangerous. Republicans are valueless. As a matter of fact, somebody needs to go ahead and just tweet that. Say, yo, on the Wells Report today, he summed it all up. Democrats, because they refuse to get rid of leftists in their party, are dangerous. Republicans are valueless. That's the quote from today's show. Getting back to the election after I distracted myself. In Vermont, State Senate President pro tempore Becca Balint has won the Democrat primary for the state's lone House seat, making her the favorite to become the state's first woman to serve in Congress. Yeah, it's not about whether she's qualified or not. It's her gender. It's her personal plumbing. By all means, let's extol that. That makes it USA Today, doesn't it? In Wisconsin, Democrat Mandela Barnes won resoundingly and now will face incumbent GOP Senator Ron Johnson in November in a race that could determine which party will control the upper chamber next year. She's going to get crushed. In Minnesota, listen to this. In Minnesota, the biggest upset of the night was Democrat Representative Ilhan Omar, who won by a razor-thin margin of under 3,000 votes against a centrist pro-cop challenger. In 2020, Omar won that district by 35,000 votes. She barely survived the primary. That she did survive the primary, well, once again, that's a stain on the Democrat Party. That they continue to allow socialist communists to stand within their party tells you all you need to know about the Democrats. Either they're afraid of the coming socialist revolution in the United States and don't want to get sent to the gulag, or they kind of like it. Either way, it's a stain on the Democrat Party. Let's see what else. In Connecticut, Representative Republican Dominic Rapini won the primary contest to be Secretary of State. He's a former leader of the Fight Voter Fraud, a group that promoted false claims about the 2020 presidential election. We don't know that those claims were false. We don't know. We simply don't know. And every time USA Today and every other mainstream media organization says, continues to promote false claims about the 2020 presidential election, those words are going to come back to haunt them. They're going to come back to haunt them. So let's get to the specifics. Donald Trump-backed businessman Tom Michaels declared that they won the Republican nomination for governor of Wisconsin Tuesday, defeating establishment GOP pick Rebecca Kleefisch. She's a good candidate. I'm really sorry that we're losing. That we're losing these candidates. I hope that people remember that there are really good candidates in these primaries that are losing. Let's say Trump disliked some of the members of the Wisconsin establishment, saying they did not fight hard enough for him as he tried to overturn the 2020 election loss in the state. That's honest. That's okay. That's journalism. So he endorsed Michaels, a construction executive, making his first political race. I'm going to say something else, okay? Becoming the governor of a state in the United States is not where you start your political career, okay? For crying out loud, be a mayor first. By the way, this would be the same advice that I would give Pete Buttigieg. Being a mayor of South Bend, Indiana, okay, maybe that can make you the transportation secretary. But I gotta point this out. Just like I pointed out a second ago, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, okay, the state's first female representative. I guess that was that was in Vermont. Okay, personal plumbing doesn't have anything to do with actual knowledge, with actual capability or actual competence. And who you snuggle up with at night. First of all, it's none of my business. But that's not a substitute for actually knowing what you're doing. I think Pete Buttigieg, has an awful lot of very serious voters who voted him into office. Let's see if he can do it at the state level. Let's see if he can be a governor. That's what he needs to concentrate on. And we'll see if this is going to be one of those political superstars that actually makes it. Okay? Let's do that. Let's see. So Trump disliked the Wisconsin establishment, and that's why Tim Michaels declared that they had won. Actually, CNN declared it, and Fox declared it. A lot of people declared it. I don't know what USA Today is talking about. Cleafitch, by the way, as a former lieutenant governor, had the backing of prominent Wisconsin Republicans, including ex-governor Scott Walker. She also had the support of Trump's vice president, Michael Pence. Michaels now faces incumbent Democrat Governor Tony Evers in the fall election. That's going to be a tough campaign. It's going to be a tough campaign. Okay, you may be a businessman. Now keep something in mind, okay? Keep something in mind. I don't think that the presidency of the United States is where you start your political career either. But Donald Trump sure proved me wrong on that one. So maybe Tim Michaels is of that ilk. I don't know. I kind of doubt it. I think Donald Trump is 1 in a billion. But who knows? The people of Wisconsin are going to decide. But let me tell you something. The guy better bring his A game, and he better not make a single mistake. And even if he does bring his A game, and if he doesn't make a single political mistake, Democrat Governor Tony Evers is going to give him all he can handle. All he can handle. Let's see what else. In one of the only competitive primaries of the night in Connecticut, Leora Levy won the Republican Senate primary with 50.5% of the vote, according to the Associated Press. They called the race. She's a Cuban-American businesswoman. She defeated former state representative Thema Clarides, that's Themis Clarides, who had 40% of the vote and had won the party's convention's endorsement. Levy will face incumbent Senator Richard Blumenthal in the general election and will likely get crushed. It's just one of those things. He's held the seat since 2011, remains favored in November, but his approval rating declined below 50%, according to the Hartford Courant. He's not going to lose that race. He's not. A bellwether race in Minnesota has been decided. Brad Finstad, a former director of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, won a special election to serve the remainder of Republican Representative Jim Hagedorn's term. Hagedorn sadly died of cancer in February. The race was seen as a litmus test for November in a district that leans Republican. Former President Donald Trump won by 10 points there in 2020. Democrats had been counting on the abortion rights rally or the abortion rights mess to rally voters to the poll and win competitive races like this one. Didn't happen. And of course, we already talked about Ilhan Omar, a progressive House member, which is a euphemism for communist. She won a squeaker in Minnesota. George Floyd was murdered by police against a candidate who ran on a pro-law enforcement platform. Omar's challenger, Don Samuels, a centrist and former Minneapolis City Council member, earned a late endorsement from the city's mayor, which gave him a boost. Additionally, his pro-police platform set him apart from Omar, who previously called to defund the police. The incumbent was locked in a tight race 2 years ago and won by 35,000 votes. This year, less than 3,000. The magic, okay, or the novelty of Ilhan Omar is wearing out. Scott Jensen, a physician and former Minnesota state senator, easily won the state's Republican primary for governor. Jensen said he will work to make most abortions illegal in the state, a top issue in the competitive state. Well, keep something else in mind. This is USA Today, and they are trying to make him look as extreme as they possibly can, if that's the right word. He's going to face Democrat Governor Tim Walz in November. Again, that's going to be a really tough race. Ron Johnson easily won the Republican nomination in Wisconsin. Tuesday will face a challenge from Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes in the fall, a November contest that could determine which party controls the Senate. Johnson had been slipping in the polls, with independent voters moving away from him on COVID response and positions on abortion and election conspiracies. However, some analysts have noted that Johnson has been down in the polls before, only to mount a comeback and win in the general election. The Connecticut race for Secretary of State did grab many headlines, but does underscore a theme of the 2022 election cycle. Republican Dominic Rapini won the primary contest to be the state's chief election officer. He's a former leader of Fight Voter Fraud, a group that has promoted false claims about the 2020 presidential election. He's going to face Democrat Stephanie Thomas, a state legislator in November. I want to talk a little bit about that. Okay. This is going to be instructive. Okay. There are a lot of people that said nothing was wrong with the 2020 election. There are a lot of people that said there were lots of things wrong with the 2020 election. I'm one of those people. There are a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of problems with that election. That there are no explanations for. None. Okay? However, the proof of whether or not there was a problem in 2020, part of that proof is going to be settled in 2022 and 2024. We're going to learn about the 2022 election in the subsequent elections that are currently on our plate. You're listening to the Wells Report. I'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. I want to reinforce something that I just said. Okay? I want to reinforce something I just said. Here's the way I see this. Okay? The 2020 election, depending on what numbers you use, the 2020 election had either a 95% turnout or a 75% turnout. None of those things happen. I get back to real basic things. That's one thing that got my attention. There's never been a 75% turnout among American voters ever. And there won't ever be again. when we get to the 2024 election, you'll see. The most we can expect is somewhere around 62%, something along that line. And when you talk about a country with 330 million people in it, that 10% is a lot of people. It's 30 million people. Okay? So that's problem number one. Problem number two, President Obama, in his second term, actually got fewer votes than his first term. I believe he got 67,000 votes. Joe Biden got 81,000 votes. 81,000. He got 67 million votes. President Obama got 67 million votes. President Biden got 81 million votes. President Biden? Really? So that's another problem. So when I'm talking about things, I'm just talking about basic things. I'm not getting wrapped up in the conspiracies and the intrigue and the boxes under tables and all that stuff. Okay, I'm not. I'm just looking at basic raw numbers, and they don't add up. Not in any way, shape, or form. The third thing that I keep in mind is that President Trump got 74 million votes. More votes for a sitting president ever of either party. And there's no reason to believe that those votes aren't totally honest. There's no reason to believe that 74 million people did not vote for Donald Trump. But there is reason to believe that 81 million people did not vote for the political powerhouse that was Joe Biden. I'm sorry, but during the Obama years, the real political strength, according to the 2020 election, wasn't President Obama. It was Joe Biden. And so what I meant was, when I said all that, subsequent elections will shine bright lights on the 2020 election. And that's going to happen this time. I can say this unequivocally. Joe Biden will not run for re-election. Why? Because nobody's going to be able to explain why 81 million people voted for him the first time. And I doubt that he'll break 60 million next time. He may win the election, but he's not going to break 60 million votes. And somebody's going to have to explain why we lost 21 million votes. And so he's not going to run because they don't want to expose that. Nobody does, of either party. So Joe is going to do what he should have done at the end of the Obama administration, which is to go out and smoke cigars, smoke great Cuban cigars, and drink incredibly expensive brandy, and think about how great he is, which he should have been doing for the last couple of years, last 4 years. I mean, like it or not, the people of Delaware love the guy, and they kept sending him back almost a half century. They kept sending him back and sending him back. He had to have something right. And I respect the people, the voters of Delaware. I do. So what we're going to see is more illumination. And so all these people that are talking about how the 2020 election was perfect, they're going to eat those words. I can just feel it. Something is going to break on that. I don't know where or when or even how. And I really don't care. I really don't. At the end of all of it, the people spoke. Joe Biden's the president. And that's that. My only concern is for future elections. Because no matter what you believe about 2020, the one thing you have to believe, the one thing you're going to have to believe is that no one is confident in the American election process at this moment. No one could be. And we're going to have to fix it. And we're going to have to fix it definitively. We're going to have to fix it systemically. We're going to have to get rid of voting machines where their operating system is a secret. That's just bogus right on its face. It's like bogus. Oh, well, there you go. My name is John David Wells. This has been the Wells Report. If you like this show, make sure you share it. Make sure you tell your friends about it. We got to build this one step at a time or I'm going to have to get a real job. God bless you. I'll see you later. Okay. All right. That's all I have. So God bless all y'all. Let me get back to the chat thing real fast. Let's see. No, he spent $6.2 trillion. Yeah. Signing off. Have a great day. Great show. JD, have a wonderful evening. Good evening, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Catch you tomorrow. Yes, indeedy. Bye-bye. I love ya. Take good care. Thank you.